Well, welcome. We're here with Marcello. I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell us a little bit about himself and where he's been.
Um, Hi, my name is Marcello Ticintio. I'm a writer from Canada, and I'm working on a project, a book about communities in the world that live in the shadows of walls, fences, other kinds of hard barriers. And I've been working on this for the last 2 years or so, and the travels have now taken me to parts of North Africa, India, the Middle East, Cyprus, and now I'm here on the U.S.-Mexico border to write about the border wall here.
Great. And tell us some of your most dramatic or most interesting journeys along those borders around the world.
I think some of the most interesting are the ones that I started with first. I mean, my first wall is the sand berm, it's called, that divides the disputed area of Western Sahara. And I spent 11 days with Sahrawi refugees in Algeria, and heard their stories of this very long but forgotten conflict that's still ongoing between the Moroccans and the Sahrawi people, and heard their stories of crossing minefields to get to the camps, and these incredible desert stories that all kind of revolve around this wall in the desert, that actually a series of walls in the desert that, if you line them all up, they'd be longer than the Great Wall of China. And it's one of those kind of a forgotten conflict in a forgotten place, and it was really fascinating to be there to hear these stories.
We're here now on the Arizona border, and we're focusing on the indigenous aspect of border crossing because we're getting ready for the roundtable with the Indigenous Alliance Without Borders. Maybe you could sort of put that in perspective. You've been to Nogales since you arrived, and seen a little bit of what people need to deal with homeland security. You're probably seeing patterns around the world. Some people have mentioned to me the amount of corporate profiteering from the security companies, from border agencies. I don't know if that's an issue you deal with, but we deal with it in our work, where it's become very profitable around the world for security companies to prey on the issue of borders and security, which translates for grassroots people into a lot of harassment, a lot of abuse from these sometimes poorly trained security companies. But I'd be interested just in sort of comparing some of the issues that you see repeating themselves as far as how that translates into how people crossing borders are treated around the world.
That's an interesting question. There are certain similarities. I mean, every time these governments decide to do a wall or fence, especially some of these larger ones. I mean, India's boarding up its entire border with Bangladesh, which is incredible. A huge distance. So these are always big capital borders, and the commonality is that whether or not it's worth it, whether or not these barriers work, whether or not they do what they say they're going to do. In often cases, in fact, I think that's the biggest thing in common, is that all the walls and fences that we've dealt with, investigated in the past couple of years, they never do what they're supposed to do. Their intended purposes always fails. Now, sometimes you wonder, was the real reason for building something else? Or you wonder, was just this structure made? It's just poor ideas. But there always seems to be something else going on. That's what I find most fascinating. There's always something else.
I have a great example of that right here on the Arizona border. Millions of dollars spent by Boeing to build these Wi-Fi spy towers, which I had a great deal of fun driving around and talking to people as they were building them, because in the case, in one case it was pointed directly at the community and not at the border, a community of artists and ranchers, and they would fly kites around and sort of mess with it. But the truth was they were using something like Wi-Fi, which absolutely is not going to work in that harsh region with these incredible desert mountains, which they found out, which you could have probably asked any 10-year-old that uses Wi-Fi, especially if you ever stay in a hotel with thick walls. It's really difficult to keep a good Wi-Fi connection going with any sort of physical barriers. Anyway, they spent millions, and it's been now it's becoming more public. I heard on mainstream TV last week that they'd discovered this story, which has actually been a story that's been going on for years, that not only was Boeing wasting all these millions of dollars, but they got Elbit Security, which is the Israeli defense company, to as a subcontractor. So you have the apartheid contractor from Israel here on the Arizona border with Boeing building this wall, which there's a lot of human rights abuses, a lot of environmental federal laws were violated in building this wall. But maybe you have a comment.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was I wish I could do the quote. It was an official in India who was talking about the idea of fencing up the Bangladesh border, and this official had said, fencing the border is a useless idea. It is, however, a splendid idea. And the idea was that to be seen as doing nothing is worse than doing something that doesn't work. And that idea, and it was quite openly expressed. I love the Indians for that kind of thing. I think that sort of thing happens in a lot of these borders. A lot of it is theater. It's an expression of this, of doing something is more important than doing something that's actually important. And I've seen that everywhere. From the Sahara Desert to the Sahara, back to Palestine. So, I mean, that is one of the things.
Now, as a writer traveling to borders around the world, you must have had some real close encounters with drama yourself and trauma. Have you had like threats of arrest, physical injury? Has it been pretty easy?
No, it's I haven't had that difficult time. There's a lot of times approaching the border or approaching the barrier on the border, wherever it was, whether it was something that was sometimes borderline illegal, and I was waved away from a lot of places. I wasn't taken into custody or harassed ever. I mean, I was the closest I've come to kind of action, I suppose, is I was observing. 3 times I observed kind of the anti-wall protests in a village in Palestine, Jayus, and I did take part. What would happen every Friday in this village was there'd be a protest of locals and international activists, and the protest would eventually end or begin to become a street battle between Israeli forces and Hamas. So you have the kids with the rocks and slingshots versus the soldiers with rubber bullets and tear gas, that sort of thing. And so it becomes this kind of big thing. And so I was fortunate enough to be in the middle of it. And the first time it was terrifying. But after that, I kind of get to know the choreography of these weekly events, and so I was right up there in the middle of it. But it was obviously not participating there. It was not bothered by yourself.
Well, we've just got a couple of minutes left, and I was thinking maybe you could do sort of a wrap-up, hit some of the high points, and tell us anything additionally about yourself or what you've got coming up that you'd like to share with our listeners.
Well, I'll add to the end of that first. I have visited 5 different barriers so far. I think I probably have about 3 more. The U.S.-Mexico border. I also want to visit the peace lines in Belfast. And I had an opportunity a couple of years ago to visit Kashmir, but I was there at a very bad time. I was there in November during elections, which means the weather was too cold and the political situation was too hot for me to do the work. But those are the kind of places I want to go to finish off this book and get this book done.
Tell us your full name and spelling so when people are looking
Sure.
for you, they'll know who to look for.
My name, again, is Marcello Di Cintio. First name is spelled Marcello. Last name is Dicintio. And you put those 2 words together, put a .com behind it, that's my website.
Great. And where in Canada are you from?
Calgary, Alberta.
Okay, great. It's been so nice having you. And you're going to be traveling the border next, a week or 2?
Next couple weeks.
Yeah, I'll be here in Arizona. And thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Our Cycle Sense of Things.